Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be. My name is Clarke, and welcome to this episode of Kemetic Fortitude. And today I'd like to introduce my special guest, Mr. Ray Shellmier. Ray Shellmier is a therapist, and he has African-centered psychology. Can you talk to us about exactly what is African-centered psychology?
Absolutely, brother, and thank you for having me on the program first of all. Really appreciate you. Actually, I want to call it African-centered therapy that's based in African and African American psychology, which is basically a set of principles, practices, philosophical framework, and spiritual framework that's based in cosmology and nature that we use to help the African and African descended person reconnect to the inner being that they are, to heal from the trauma that they may have experienced, heal from the anxiety that they may be experiencing, heal from the depression that they may be experiencing, or the addictions that may be afflicting them as well. We find that going back to our African base of technology that provides a cultural lens that supports our belief system, our spiritual orientation, our physical presence, and our intellectual clarity is the way to go.
Okay, so when you say cultural lens, okay, I understand this now, but for our viewers out there, what exactly do you mean by cultural lens? Because, I mean, when I think about, religion, basically, we were just taught this one thing and never question. But then I found out that everybody perceives their spirituality, or has a right to, through their own cultural lens.
Yeah. Now, the cultural lens is a framework based on belief systems, practices, behaviors, attitudes that are key to a group of people that allow them to protect themselves, educate themselves, be healthy with one another, feed themselves, and allow for them to build community, share vision, share practices to create for themselves. So when we're looking at that, and we're talking about an African-centered cultural lens, we're using cosmology, our universal principles, and natural law as our foundations for rebalancing, centering ourselves, and healing ourselves.
Okay, so me personally, I always had the impression that, sharing what's going on with my life, my personal issues, was just something that we kept to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of brothers and sisters that I talk to basically are kind of like intimidated by the idea of actually going to a, quote, therapist or a psychologist. Mm-hmm. And I happened to find this brother because I had a conversation at work one time several years ago. I was stressed out, and one of the bus operators there said, "Why don't you see a therapist?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm cool with a therapist." And she said, "No, I understand why." She said, "Why don't you go and see this guy named Ray? He's has this African-centered therapy." And I'm like, "Well, what the hell is that?" And so the funny thing about it, she was actually a European descent.
Interesting.
Yes.
And that's amazing to hear though, because your awareness was not there, but a European had it and then passed it on to you, because folks are picking up, and this is what I want to say to most African and African descended people. We stopped doing this because of chattel slavery. The Europeans, when they got a hold to psychology, they turned it into a pathological perspective where you're looking at a problem and what's wrong with someone. Psychology wasn't invented, and psychology was invented by Africans. We were the first people to even do any kind of thinking in the first place that amounted to any kind of humanity, growth and development. That's what psychology was all about, helping human beings get tools and practices and use technology that will help them grow to their fuller potential. At the time that psychology was invented, it was part of spirituality, it was part of medicine, it was part of, what do I say, physics, it was part of the daily life, it was part of the process that if you can learn how to manage and focus your behavior, okay, and you can direct yourself to do and achieve whatever it is that you desire. And when the pathological component got laid onto it in the late 1700s, early 1800s, this is when it shifted for us, because a lot of the things that they were doing to black folks was all to create harm to those black folks. And there's actually, it was in the DSM-3 at one point, which is the diagnostic and statistical manual that we use in medicine, and there was a diagnosis that they would put on slaves for running away off the plantation. They called it drapetomania. Yeah, and that was an absurd diagnosis, because you would overlay that on someone who was running off of a plantation because they didn't want to be there. Like, they would say, I guess all the black people were happy being on the plantation, being enslaved. You know, so why would they want to run away, I guess? So, I think that brought on the phrase, I ain't crazy. Because they can deem you crazy, they can keep you on the plantation.
I see.
Okay. So, I grew up where we just took care of the person who had the addiction, or we took care of the person who was hearing voices, or seeing things, or was just that aloof aunt or uncle, so-and-so, or that aunt or uncle, so-and-so, who was probably a little slower than most, you know. I grew up where the families were just taking care of that. Actually, in the mental health agency where I lived in Los Angeles, it wasn't more than 15 blocks from my house, and I never knew it existed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, so, you know, we pulled ourselves away from it because of pathology. But African-centered psychology, African-American psychology, is based on the elevation of the human being. Okay, so if you're needing help, support, you got addictions, you're having travel with your family, you can't figure out how to get yourself beyond where you are, and you know that you could be doing something more, but you can't get yourself going, you know, this is why you want to come see a therapist or a psychologist or someone who's practicing from this base, because we can share the tools, the technology, and the support and skills that you'll need to actually get you from whatever crisis you're in to stability, from whatever. And if you want to go beyond stability to thriving, we can support you in that as well.
Okay, so I've heard this term thrown around over the years called post-traumatic slave syndrome. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, Dr. Leary actually was one of my professors, and I really appreciated the sister's genius around looking at slavery and the trauma that it created, because she looked at post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it's based on experiencing tremendous trauma, injury, and who more experienced trauma and injury than someone who was in American chattel slavery? The brutality that took place during those hundreds of years, and understanding that slavery and the trauma of slavery didn't end with
emancipation.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a person who has been traumatized, and you give birth and you have to raise the child without any support to recover from the trauma that you've experienced, you're passing all that on
Okay.
to that child. So the child may have not experienced the actual trauma that you experienced, but all your behaviors gives that child the behaviors and attitudes that they themselves actually experienced the trauma.
So then, and this isn't something that just gradually reduces itself. It just keeps being passed down the line.
Exponentially.
Okay.
Exponentially down the line. And injury and things like that is not a static thing where it just stays in one's pace. It's actually a dynamic thing where it grows. You know, so each time it grows, and this is why you and I have challenges, you know, because our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, our great-great-great-parents experienced this, and whatever they were dealing with residually just got passed down to us.
Well, you know, I actually, a couple of years ago, I did the Ancestry DNA, or Ancestry.com DNA test, and I found out that my great-grandmother on my mom's side was actually born on a plantation, and what made it so, it just really hit me because I went to New Orleans and Baton Rouge for a family reunion back in '98, and we actually stood on that very plantation. And then several years later, I find out, wow, you know, I'm not that far removed from slavery.
At all. I mean, in plain numbers, we're going to talk about 190 years
Yes.
since 1865 or so.
Right.
Okay. That's not that far along.
And not to mention, you know, the Jim Crow.
Not to mention that.
Wow. So for those that feel like, you know, well, where can I find this, you know, African-centered therapy at? I know of you, but are there other brothers practicing
Well, I've
this?
trained people through the years. I've been practicing for over 30 years myself.
Okay.
And so there's a few folks that have gone through interning here and have learned, you know, but you probably want to start here, and we'll refer you out if there's others, because there are men and women of African descent who know this practice. And to be honest with you, African-centered is a great word for us, you know, but our ancestors, they didn't think of themselves in terms of African or European or whatever.
Right.
These were human beings who owned the planet.
Right.
Okay. You know, so all their knowledge and information was for the planet to enjoy. You know, so even folks who come here from other backgrounds and whatnot, this resonates with them, because when you really talk about people understanding how the universe works, how nature works, we're all under that same container.
Right.
You know, it's just that the African piece is important because we're the only ones who are not getting access to our own knowledge.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting how it's just really interesting how when I look at this and I go, wow, you know, we've been so socially engineered. You know, we run away from everything that is ours and gravitate to a watered down version or a peripheral version of what it is that we have established, you know, and we wonder why we struggle, you know, because, and we're the only ones, everybody else is using our information, our knowledge rather, forget information, our knowledge, but us.
Yeah, and you know, now that I have this piece, and I think back about like my days in college, and I took a world religion class, and I look at, you know, the similarities between all the different religions in the world, and then now understand my own African spirituality. I say, wow, all this originated. So when Ray speaks on the just fragments on the periphery of our own spirituality, I mean, that's literally what it is. People took what they wanted and made it into their own version so they could view it through their own cultural lens. And in the process, they denied us and forbid us of that knowledge that we had of our own original spirituality.
Yeah, there's a saying, we come into this planet, we learn everything that it needs to be learned, then we teach to everyone that needs to be taught. then we forget the information ourselves.
Wow.
And then they run with it. Now we're in a stage where we're picking it back up again. The question is, will we forget it again? Because we're going to get it.
Yes.
We got to pick up our information, brothers and sisters, and apply the knowledge to ourselves and to our communities, and pool ourselves, build ourselves, and grow ourselves. You know, we are planetary people, so it's not about exclusivity or separatism or anything, because we just don't think that way. We never thought that way. Like I said before, African sounds good and everything because we need to pick this up, but our ancestors taught this in terms of humanity. Okay, this is why it resonates with everybody. Okay, we just need to pick it back up.
Okay, so you said something a couple minutes ago about knowledge of self. And it takes me back to a time when I first met you. You asked me a question. How much do you know about yourself? And at the time I thought, well, I know a hell of a lot about myself. But he wasn't talking about just my physical self. And it took me several years to actually figure out exactly where he was going with this. But now that I'm connected to my original ancestry, my spirituality, and read a lot of books, and one of the books that you had me read was Know Thyself. And Naeem Akbar, and he has a whole bunch of great books out there that you should add to your reading list. But once I acquired this knowledge, it really changed the way I looked at things. It changed my perspective, and I think it's actually saved my life as far as reducing my stress. And I just want to thank this brother and thank the universe for putting this brother in my life.
And I thank you, my brother, and I thank the universe for you, my brother. What do you say? Knowledge is power.
Yep, knowledge is power.
Self-knowledge is the greatest knowledge of all.
That's right. So, one of the things that I've done working with this gentleman here is start learning about the Mejanetter. And Mejanetter is basically the Kemetic words for words of nature or words of God. What you see on the pyramids is transcribed there with the
pyramids, temples, the writings.
And so people were asking me, well, why do you want to learn that? What good is it going to do you? Because really, once you understand it and can read it, you can get the truth for yourself. Because you know what they say about what's written in stone. So, you know, I'm not telling you that what you go by is, you know, something you shouldn't do, but I just went ahead and did the homework. I looked at things from a historical perspective on the timeline and made an educated choice. And, you know, we all have free will. So it's just a matter of finding what works for you, whatever works for you. If it keeps you on that course to being your highest self, then more power to you.
Seek knowledge. Seek knowledge and incorporate that knowledge into your life. Let go of the information that doesn't improve your life. Let go.
Right. Because if it doesn't make you stronger, then it's making you weaker.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Absolutely.
So, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
They can call us at 503-946-3484, extension 101, or get us or go to the web and email me at ray.shellmire, SHELLMIRE, at shellmireunlimitedpc.com. And we'll get right back to you, or go to info@shellmireunlimitedpc.com and send us a line. If you want to text at 503-803-2301.